right. This is part of a commercial being run by the Employment Policies Institute as part of a new campaign called Defeat the Debt. The group, which is a conservative research group with close ties to business, is running this ad as part of the ongoing national debate on the rising U.S. fiscal deficit and the role that China plays in financing that debate. Well, this debate was the focus of a column today by Bloomberg's Carolyn Baum. We're happy to have Carolyn join us now by phone as part of a roundtable on this topic. Jim Bianco, also with us, president of Bianco Research. He comes to us from Chicago on this afternoon. Carolyn, I want to start with you. So in your column, you say the idea that China may decide not to finance our deficit makes no sense. You know, there's a lot of folks out there and some momentum that people say, uh-oh, China's not going to buy our debt anymore. But you say that's nonsense. How come?
It is nonsense. They don't do it because they're altruistic. The fact is they are they're an export nation. And what happens is we buy their goods. Consumers like cheap Chinese goods. We pay for them in dollars. The yuan, the Chinese currency, is not convertible, which means there isn't a whole lot you can do with it. So they take it over to the central bank, and they get yuan in exchange for dollars. And, of course, the central bank there has to print up yuan. So it really behooves them, unless they want to stop exporting to us. They have these dollars. They acquire them. So what else are they going to do with them?
And they're not going to stop exporting to us, right? No doubt about that one.
Well, you know, it's funny, Carol, because they're making noises about the dollar as a reserve currency. I don't know if you can pull up a sort of a chart of the Chinese yuan going back to maybe '04, a weekly chart, CNY currency, GPW. And the yuan really was strengthening. The Chinese were officially allowing it to strengthen from the middle of 2005 till about middle of last year. And it's flatlined since then, meaning the global economy's world trade collapsed.
Right.
And the fact that they halted the appreciation in the currency tells you they are still very sensitive to remaining competitive as exporters.
I wonder, though, I mean, you know, when you look at that commercial, Carolyn, I want to get your take on it because, of course, China's very happy to be lending us money and charging us interest for it. I mean, they get paid to do it, and we're the debtors. It's still not a very pleasant situation in which to be as Americans.
Well, again, it depends. You could talk to economists who say it behooves you to import stuff if it's cheaper, if another country has a comparative advantage. We don't produce sneakers here in this country anymore. I don't think we want to produce sneakers. So why should we use scarce resources to produce things to sell to other countries? There's nothing wrong with importing cheap goods.
Hey, Jim, I want to bring you into this. I know you were, you know, Carolyn quoted you in the column. I mean, all this talk about Chinese, you know, not buying our deficit, I'm assuming you concur.
Yeah, I do. I mean, this is also an old argument. As Carolyn can attest to, eminent people have been making this argument for 30 or 40 years that whoever happens to be the current big debt holder, and up until a year ago it was the Japanese, that they were going to stop buying. And the fact of the matter is, as long as you keep selling us goods and paying for them, and we pay for them in dollars, the only place you have to do with those dollars is bring them back to the United States. So they're not unlike, say, an auto parts supply company. You could be the best run auto parts supply company in the world, but if your customers are Chrysler and General Motors, you're stuck with them, and they're stuck with us. And I think they know that.
But they've talked to the IMF about doing something different as well, correct, Jim?
Yeah, they had some noises with the IMF that asked the IMF if they would issue $750 billion worth of notes denominated in dollars so they could use their dollars to buy IMF notes. But if that were to happen, and that's a big if, that's many years, if not a decade plus away from it being something that could actually compete with the dollar. And it's a very low probability. But the point is that they don't like it, but they also know that there's not much they can do about it.
Although, I mean, Jim, you and I are just in our early to mid-20s, I know, but a few years to a decade...
Hey, Carolyn, you and I, this is not fair.
This is not a lot of time, right, Carolyn? In the grand scheme of things, a decade, I mean, if we lose our status as world reserve currency, is that the kind of thing that could happen in a decade? And in 20 years even, that's a fairly short amount of time.
Well, if I saw that China was willing to let its currency float, meaning if it allowed the currency to trade, you might start to think maybe they're moving in that direction. But there's no sign of it yet. China's exports are picking up again. As I said, they've frozen the yuan. They don't want it to appreciate any further. So I do understand that the Chinese are purchasing more TIPS, inflation index treasuries, which is still our debt, and it's still an option for them if they're worried about inflation. I would just point out that the central banks need to purchase all these dollars that Chinese exporters get from us. In order to buy them, they print yuan. And right now their money supply is growing 28%. So I think China has bigger things to worry about than orchestrating a new currency regime for world trade.
All right, so Jim, there's a lot of, Jim and Carolyn, there's a lot of politics that obviously play into this, and we see Treasury, Secretary Tim Geithner go to China, and they talk about the currency, and they talk about other things. I mean, is this just, grandstanding and play, and nothing much more than that,
well,
Jim?
He promises to them that we'll keep our deficit under control, and please don't be mad at us, and we'll do whatever you like.
Is it just, grandstanding and just play for the cameras? Jim, you start here.
That's exactly what it is. There is no politician in the United States that is going to go to China, have China tell them how we should be running policy, and then come back here and tell American citizens and voters that we should do what the Chinese told us to do. They will go there, they will act concerned, they will tell them that they've got a plan that looks out after their interests, but in the fact of the matter is, if it does look out after their interest, it's only in a coincidence. There is, like I said, I cannot fathom that a politician would even attempt to say that we have to do something unpleasant because the Chinese want us to do it. So it's all talk, is all it really is.
Carolyn, just 15 seconds left here. Is it just all tough talk in your view?
Yeah, I think so. The ball's in their court. Let them export less to us, and they won't have to buy as many treasuries.
All right, thanks so much for joining us. Carolyn Baum coming to us via telephone from a nicer place probably than New York City.
You got it. And Jim Bianco also coming to us from a nice place, joining us from Chicago. Thanks to both of you.